Welcome to Legacy Blueprint, Planet Forward, the podcast where top thought leaders in law, finance, and wealth planning come together to guide your future. Hosted by distinguished estate planning attorney Mike Bascom, each episode highlights industry experts who bring clarity, innovation, and proven strategies to the table. Because building a legacy isn't a solo act, it's the result of a team of professionals working in harmony. Join us weekly as we showcase the leaders shaping tomorrow and give you the tools to plan with confidence today.
Well, today we're joined by Robert Amato, principal of Compass Wealth Management. He brings over 25 years worth of experience helping families navigate their financial futures with credentials such as the CFP and the CIMA. Robert has guided clients through every stage of wealth building, legacy planning, and long-term financial strategy. Welcome to the podcast, Robert.
Thank you, Mike.
We're excited to have you here. You spent over 25 years in the financial services working with firms like Merrill Lynch and Smith Barney before you founded Compass Wealth Management. What motivated you to eventually build your own practice?
Big firms tend to want to capture all available revenue streams. And I found early on I was very good at two things. One, comprehensive financial planning, and two, strategic investments, managing risk. And the vision for Compass was born out of doing the things that you do very well, and then assisting clients with other areas, essentially giving away, certain areas. So I used to be insurance licensed, for example, and gave the insurance license up, but through my CFP, continuing education and practices, me and my team are very well versed on insurance. We can do planning for clients in that regard, but we're not getting a commission for it. We're advising them on it, fiduciary practice, and then we'll essentially assist them in trying to find the best value for that insurance.
Well, that's very interesting. I like that. Now, I know in some of your previous stops, not only were you advising clients, but you are also training new advisors. What are some of the lessons that you've learned from that experience that maybe still shape how you serve families today?
Yeah, the training role certainly keeps you sharp, keeps you attuned to your own, practices and how you go about things. I think, Mike, the real benefit is how I select and manage our team of planners and wealth managers today. Being able to identify traits that aren't teachable, such as humility, really caring about people in general. Those are things that you can just identify with personalities. It's going to be very hard to teach that. And, caring about folks genuinely wanting to help is attributes that are immeasurable in our industry, but very hard to teach.
Yeah, those don't tend to show up on a resume or with a
Right.
designation. So interesting. Now, you've earned some wonderful credentials, two of which are the CFP and the CIMA designations. I know those are both well-respected credentials in the wealth management area. How do these certifications help you deliver exceptional value to your clients?
So I completed both of those very early in my career, and I think that really helped me gain a much better understanding of getting to that next level of planning, being as comprehensive as possible. And then with the CIMA, the CIMA designation, asset allocation, being able to round out portfolios, not following more popular trends, but really trying to match a client's financial plan with their investment mix, and not being afraid to introduce investments that maybe don't trend in the same direction as the market, that offer benefits, reduced volatility there as well. I think going forward, so that was early in my career, Mike, and I think today and really over the last couple of decades, it's been the continuing education. It's been the kind of gentle push of, hey, you've got these hours in both areas that you have to fill, and just being able to keep up to speed with everything in both areas, both planning and investments.
Makes a lot of sense. Estate planning and wealth management often intersect, hence how you and I have met. From your perspective, what's the most common financial blind spot that families face when they're planning their legacy?
Yes, this is a good question. I think the common intersection is probably helping clients truly understand risk. And Mike, I think for you in particular, with your team and your expertise, it's helping them understand if you don't have this in place, here's what could happen. Here's how we solve that. Here's the different options to solve that. I think in our space, it's similar in regards to planning, maybe more in general, of hey, what are things maybe you aren't focusing on, things you aren't considering, and does your current investment allocation marry, that longer term goal? So, kind of different for you and me, but I think risk is probably the core of it.
Well, your firm has a strong reputation of being able to help people identify and mitigate risks. So that's outstanding. Yeah, I know a lot of people when they think about financial planning, it's hey, it's all about the hottest investment, right? What's the latest
Yeah.
trend? But obviously, it's much broader than that. So, how do you guide families to think more holistically about their wealth as opposed to what's the latest, hottest stock to pick?
Yeah, so another good question there. I think it comes down to the process on the planning side, interestingly enough, not necessarily with starting on the investment side. So when you go through a fairly detailed process with clients and prospective clients and cover all the major areas, the major what we call pillars of financial planning, it gives them the ability to understand that, hey, here's what you're doing great at. Here's what we might want to focus on. Here's some areas that we can really impact the direction of where you want to go longer term. And then the investment piece kind of falls into place. The investment part of that is okay, we know where you are, we know where you want to go. Here's the vehicle, or here's tweaks on how you're currently allocated to get you there. And then to your previous point about the hot investments, there's a time and a place for speculation, and that can be a small part of what some clients do. Some clients can't afford to do much at all. Some clients can do a bit more. So we try to take that on a case by case basis.
That makes a lot of sense. So, what's a financial principle or strategy that you wish the young professionals or young families in Georgia understood a little bit earlier in life? Since I know you've represented many mature families, what do you think the young ones should know?
I think for the young folks, and you probably echo this on the estate side, is don't assume that you have time to really try to understand where you want to go, when you want to retire. Life's things. I'm sure you connect with your current clients, maybe the younger generation, and give them guidance of, hey, you might not think that you need a will or trust, but in fact you do, and here's why. So, Mike, for us, it's the same thing on the financial planning side. You're never too young to plan. Planning is going to give you conviction in what you're doing, whether that's savings or earlier retirement, whatever your goals are. So, I think the takeaway is just you're never too young to have some very concrete plans in place.
It's interesting. We'll see some people who hit the ground and they run hard, but if you don't know the direction you're running, you lose some of your effectiveness of trying to hit the ground running so hard. So, yeah, it makes a lot of
Absolutely.
sense.
Yeah, great point.
Now, some of this can be a little bit complex. So, I mean, let's be transparent here, right? Planning for future can oftentimes feel a little bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
So, what do you do to help clients cut through that complexity and focus on what really matters the most and not get caught up in all the weeds?
So trying to identify and trying to come to a understanding of what is most important from a client's perspective or a prospective client's perspective, and where they might need the most help from our perspective. And oftentimes those don't overlap. So we'll try to really try to figure out what areas we can help them reduce clutter, focus. And then once we get that cleared away, then we can get to the areas that we feel will be the most impactful for them longer term.
All right, that makes sense. With markets changing, how do you balance educating clients about short-term volatility while helping them keep focused on their long-term goals?
Yeah, there's one of the big challenges. I do think that comes back to trendy investments a lot. And it from there, it's really just identifying how much speculative, how much speculation can you handle, with your current situation. But I think the question, going back to your question, Mike, the short term versus the long term. So we use what we call a bucket strategy, where we'll make sure that we have a short term bucket that is very liquid, flexible for a client that's going to accommodate short term needs or emergencies that come up. And that does provide some confidence to take some longer strategic, say, equity risk in areas such as retirement accounts, Roth accounts in particular, that tend to be one of the longest assets that people tend to hold on to. And it just gives them that confidence that even if there is volatility present, it's a longer term asset. They don't need to tap that. They've got the shorter term assets that they can lean on.
That makes a lot of sense. I know the sexy game is to play what if I'd only invested X dollars in X asset such a period of time ago, I would have X multiple of wealth right now, and that's such a dangerous game to play. If we all could do woulda, coulda, shoulda, 2020 hindsight, well, we'd all be Warren Buffett.
True, very true.
Now, I know you're a husband and a father. So how has having a family shaped the way that you approach advising other families about their financial futures?
Probably perspective, Mike. Probably just in dealing with different clients and financial plans and assisting clients with their children, even grandchildren now. Being able to think back to stages of my marriage or where my kids were at a certain point, and that just it hits home. It really makes you want to help as much as you can, provide as much advice, give as many options as possible, because you know how important that stuff is to you and your family.
Well, we find in estate planning, it actually all boils down to love and it's people. And that's what financial planning is too. And so, who do you love more than your family? Ideally, that's where I think it all rests. So good
Yeah, it's
experience.
such a great point. Absolutely.
So, in your experience building Compass Wealth Management and guiding clients for decades, what's been the biggest challenge, either in growing the business or helping families build wealth that you've had to overcome? And how has it shaped the way that you help clients today?
If I had to pin it to one thing, Mike, it's probably helping clients be centered around the risks that they take, knowing that the environment, especially today with social media, such easy access to news, at your fingertips, being able to help them smooth out their views and not catch the highs and the lows. So, not get too caught up in the euphoria of positive environments, even extremely rewarding return, environments like we seem to be in now, or the opposite. One advantage of doing this for decades is to go through those periods of very challenging environments. A lot of younger investors may not have experienced. 2020 was so different because it was so quick. It was really a 1 month ordeal. It was dramatic, but the recovery was so quick. Compare that to the 2008 financial crisis, and it felt like watching paint dry. And then compare that to the dot-com bubble, and again, it felt like you were in the desert, for 5 years. It was a very different environment. And history seldom repeats, but it often rhymes. And I think we will see an environment like that again. And I think the biggest challenge is just helping clients understand the main focus is to get them to their goals, and straying from that, taking more risk, maybe taking less risk in scary environments, rarely helps long term getting them to those goals.
Having been in the business for a long time, it's great to have survived through and help clients through some of those ups and downs.
Yeah.
When some people jump on the bandwagon now, everything's just the go days. So having survived through those tough times is key.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Compass Wealth Management. It's kind of an interesting name. It's a powerful name. So partially, how did you come up with the name? And I know Compass. How does Compass represent you and what you're doing with your clients?
Yeah. So it's interesting. Compass came to me when I thought about my childhood being enamored with a compass and
Mm,
like a young child wondering how on earth this thing worked before
mhm.
I understood magnetics and all those things. And then the second aspect of that was compasses have a extraordinarily long history. I think it dates back to the BC time period, interestingly enough. So
Mhm.
I thought that was a very interesting aspect that fit, for with me being young and then just something that represents such a long history of continued use, interestingly enough. And then for us, the way we relate that to clients, Mike, is thinking about it from the standpoint of, and it's almost a reminder for us to try to ask clients, where are you today? So if you're looking at a compass, where am I headed? Where am I pointed to? And most importantly, what I think a lot of people forget in the day to day is, where do you really want to go? And we try to intersect that. The planning we do, the investment risk management that we do is try to get them moving in that direction that they want to go and maintain that stability along the way.
I was a Boy Scout when I was a kid, and that's how I learned how to use a compass. And no matter where you were, if you knew how to use it, you could get where you needed to go. So I love your
Yeah.
description of it. Very powerful there. All right. So my favorite question, the last question. If you could leave our listeners with one actionable step to strengthen their financial legacy today, give me your very best tip. What would you do?
Probably the best tip is twofold. One, start early, and two, be as consistent as you can long term. And that doesn't matter, Mike, if you are just starting off where you're barely able to scrape, a few dollars in your 401k, all the way out to our older clients that are well into retirement, have grandkids, in some really neat cases, great grandchildren, and they're thinking about legacy. They're thinking about consistency in a very different way than maybe folks would start, but it all ties together. And I think that's probably the most important aspect, is just that consistency. And, for the young folks or the old folks alike.
I like it. Very well stated. All right. So if one of our listeners wants to get more information or to talk to you, what's the best way for them to do that?
So I would offer our website first, and then I am happy to provide my email as well. Our website is www.compass, W as in wealth, M as in management.net. And then my direct email is robert.amato, AMATO, at compasswm.net.
Terrific. We'll put those links in the description below as well. Robert, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you being a part of our podcast.
Mike, thank you so much.
That concludes today's episode of Legacy Blueprint, Plan It Forward with Mike Bascom. Each week, we bring you insights from thought leaders across law, finance, and wealth planning. Because building your legacy is never a one-person journey. It takes a team of dedicated professionals working in harmony to turn vision into achievement. If you're ready to take the next step toward your secure future, visit bascomlaw.com or call 77028559493. And don't forget to tune in again next week as we highlight more experts and strategies to help you plan it forward with confidence.